Beyond the Beltway, this is Bruce DuMont with our weekly analysis of national politics, featuring occasional injections of rumor and innuendo, all offered up by a panel of political insiders, pundits, power brokers, public servants, professors, and most importantly, plain-speaking Americans from coast to coast. Tonight featured commentary by pro-Trump Republican Kent Gray, anti-Trump Republican David Cohen, economist from DePaul University Mike Miller, and in our second hour, Democrat Ray Lopez, reporter Bill Nighat from Georgia Public Radio and NPR, and Republican commentator Chris Roebling. Our program tonight coming to you from our home base at WCGO Radio. That's in beautiful Evanston, Illinois. Nice to have you with us. We've got a great 2 hours of discussion for you this evening. I want to begin by saying that, we have frequently discussed on this program over the last several months the enthusiasm or lack of enthusiasm for Joe Biden amongst Democrats and some independents. Well, tonight in our first hour, we're going to be talking about Republican enthusiasm, and we're going to find out how enthusiastic Republicans are about their choice comes November. And we begin with three identified Republicans, and they are, we welcome Kent Gray, who is a pro-Trump Republican, joins us from downstate Illinois. And Mike Miller is a economist and also a Republican from DePaul University. And David Cohen is with us. He's on furlough from the Union League Club of Chicago, and for many years was a congressional staffer on the staff of John Edward Porter, who is a longtime moderate Republican from the North Shore of Chicago. So we welcome you all. David Cohen, I'm going to begin with you, because you have told me you are not going to vote for Donald Trump. Why?
Well, I didn't vote for him in 2016, and I don't plan to vote for him this fall because, from my point of view, he has abandoned every pillar and every value for which the Republican Party once stood. I'm not voting for Donald Trump because I feel that he has squandered his opportunity to show us the kind of leadership that can be achieved and that is possible with truly conservative values rather than self-serving ones. I think.
But you don't say yet that you're a Democrat. How come you haven't made the complete switch?
Well, because I've argued for many years Donald Trump is not a Republican. Not voting for Donald Trump, that's not. If you don't vote for Donald Trump, that doesn't mean you don't favor Republican policies and philosophy. It means you don't see in him the qualities that we need in a leader to be the standard bearer of that party or any other party.
Mike Miller, I want to bring Mike Miller into the conversation. He is an economist from DePaul University. Longtime listeners and viewers of this program will know that 4 years ago you were not a big fan of Donald Trump, so you have said on the air that you did not vote for him, but you have become a fan. Why?
I base my change on what he's actually done. He has picked judges, as he said he would, that he had told us up front. And the judges' choices, I think, have been excellent. He has fought against the swamp, which I think is excellent. He has reduced regulations. He has put America first, which I like very much. And I also have to, I always weigh things, being an economist. I weigh things, costs and benefits. We have to think of the alternative. Hillary Clinton, I am so glad that she is not president. I don't think it could have been the end of the world, in a sense, had she won. I'm not so sure that that's true with Joe Biden and what will become of the country if the Marxists and the radicals that are trying to get power are able to manipulate him. And
I want to go to Kent Gray. We're going to come back to all of these issues, but I do want to go to Kent Gray. Kent Gray, you saw Donald Trump as a winner a long time ago in 2016. You're still a Trump supporter. Are you concerned? A little different question to you. Are you concerned when you hear David, a Republican, still not sold on what Donald Trump is selling?
No, I think there are a fair amount of Republicans who do not still trust Donald Trump. But I think over the last 4 years, there have been more and more Republicans that have seen what his final policy outcomes were and were as surprised, frankly, as I was. I did not expect him to get this many great things done from a conservative Republican standpoint. And so his process and progress on corporate tax reform, immigration and border security, slowing down the administrative state, the judges. I mean, these are things that we have long wanted. Now, I will tell you, and I've worked for him for many years now, I enjoy Donald Trump, but sometimes he can be a little exhausting. And he doesn't, I was talking to a friend of mine today, he doesn't play the role that Ronald Reagan did of the ideal president as a character. And I think that causes some division in the country. But if you look past the tweets and you're a conservative Republican, he is getting real things done that are on your wish list.
Last week he said that one of the concerns he had is that too many people liked Dr. Fauci, too many people liked Dr. Birx, but he said, I just don't think people like me personally. It's the personality. Do you agree with that? And is there any way to change a personality with a little over 90 days to go, Mike?
No, there's no way to change. He's 70-some years old. He's not going to change. And in some sense, I admire his straight. We know exactly who he is. There's no fake stuff there. Everybody talked about, for example, Barack Obama, how cool he was. No, he was cold. He was cold. And I think a lot of people hide. They have a persona in the public, and they have a persona in...
But a lot of people like that coldness, Mike.
Well,
you know that. I mean, you don't. I not like it.
I like genuine people. I like people who are genuine, who don't try to snow me. I know exactly who Donald Trump is. He's an imperfect person, and so am I. Well, what I judge him by are the policies he comes up with.
David Cohen.
Well, I was going to say I'm surprised to hear Kent laud President Trump's leadership as a conservative, or Mike, for that matter, for conservative principles. You know, the congressman I worked for used to say that Republicans across this nation come from a spectrum within the Republican ideology, but there are certain core values, core pillars of the party, you might say, that all Republicans would share. At the top of the list is fiscal conservatism, followed by a strong national defense, free trade and free enterprise, and limited government and respect for the Constitution. On virtually every one of those measures, this president has failed to provide that leadership and to stand up for those principles. Fiscal conservatism, we have a tax bill that the president helped engineer passage of. While you may argue for some of its meritorious effects, it has exploded the national debt and the national deficits, and it was enacted at a time of growth, not at a time of slowing in the economy. And by the way, speaking of he's not a Ronald Reagan type Republican, many of our viewers and listeners may have noted that the Reagan estate, the estate of Ronald Wilson Reagan, just contacted the Trump administration and the campaign to ask them to please cease and desist using the late president's image and invoking his name in the campaign. The Reagan family itself has rejected the way that this president has conducted himself in office. That ought to say something to the legions of Republicans who admire Ronald Reagan.
When we come back, I want to get everybody's response. So we do have to break down. I want to get everybody's response. And again, because we're doing this on Zoom, it's a little difficult to keep the flow of conversation going like the old days when we were around the table, but we do our best with this new technology. 1-800-723-8029. We've got some callers on the line. We'll bring them into the conversation. If you are a Republican, give us a call.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
A line is a powerful thing. It connects the global economy to your living room. Cleaner air to stronger markets. Factory floors to less crowded roads. Today's progress to tomorrow's promise. Norfolk Southern. One line, infinite possibilities.
Bruce DuMont back. Pam Whitson calls, and David, she has a question for you. She said, I'll believe what you said about the Reagan family if Mike Reagan was the one who made that comment. Do you know who actually made that comment, David?
You're asking
David,
me who made?
Yes.
I'm telling you, there was a written letter, not a comment. There was a letter sent to the president's campaign and the administration from the Reagan estate, asking that the Trump campaign cease and desist using the president's likeness, image, or recordings in their campaign materials. It wasn't a comment. It was a formal cease and desist request.
All right, but it wasn't necessarily signed by a Reagan. This caller wanted to know whether Mike Reagan was the one that said it. A talk show host, you don't know that. That doesn't appear to be the answer.
It was not. It was not a comment. It was a legal transmission from.
But this person wanted to know whether someone whose last name was Reagan signed it, and the answer that you have is really no. You don't know that.
I don't know. No.
Okay, good. Let's go to Rodney, who's listening to. Go ahead, Ken Craig.
I think it was the Reagan Foundation that made that argument, not the estate. Yeah. I think it was the head of it and he's a known kind of left moderate type individual who's kind of a rhino. So, I mean, there's some background in there. And obviously, Ron and Patty Reagan were never big supporters of even their dad.
Are you
Michael's?
I want to go back to my first question to you, Ken. Are you surprised? And again, we have this Lincoln Project. There's another group called Republican Voters Against Trump, which is another organization. The Lincoln Project is going to spend $16 million on television. I saw one of their spots this morning on ABC. Are you worried about the level of organization against Donald Trump this time?
Well, I know most of those guys that are in the Lincoln Project. Worked with them on previous campaigns because I come from establishment Republicanism, and they were anti-Trump 4 years ago. They were anti-Trump 5 years ago, and they'll be anti-Trump for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. I think what's going to come out with those guys is they might spend $16 million on TV, but they're going to pocket $20 million amongst themselves because they're all basically political ad makers, hacks, communications professionals who kind of got left out of the Trump train, and that's it's too bad for them. Some of us jumped on and got involved. They didn't, and they don't like it.
Let's go to Mike Miller, because Mike, last week there was some bad economic news. The second quarter finished down 9.5%, and the projection is that they're going to miss the mark annually this year, down almost 33%. As an economist, your reaction to that bleak news?
Oh, that was there was no surprise. This is the oddest economic period in my 40 years being an economist. The decline was fully expected. What's funny is that I shouldn't say funny. In the first quarter, the economy grew through all of January, all of February, and the first 2 weeks of March. Mm-hmm. The decline of 5% in GDP that first quarter all occurred in the last 2 weeks of March. The decline in GDP we saw this time is predominantly through April and May, but starting in June, the economy started to turn around. Mm-hmm. It was, it's a measurement question. How much did the economy fall compared to the quarter before? And that was the 9.5%. Now, the other number you give is, it asks the question, were the economy to continue to decline the same way it did in the second quarter for a full year, how far would it fall? It would fall 32%. Now, the reason we don't think that's going to have anything going forward is because the economy has already begun to rebound. Employment is rising. The unemployment is falling. Industrial production is rising. Sales are rising. So we're pretty sure that the third quarter compared to the second quarter will be a rebound. We just don't know by how much.
Does everyone on the air with us right now agree that the likelihood of the Republicans retaining control of the Senate is at this moment bleak? Do you agree with that, Kent?
No, I don't think it's bleak.
Okay.
I think in the end, you already see the battleground state numbers closing to within about 5 points between Biden and Trump. This is going to be a horse race all the way to the end in November. And there's going to be twists and turns in this story that none of us can even figure out at this point, because every 3 days, something that only happens every 20 or 30 years happens every week in this campaign. And a lot of crazy things are going to go on.
Are
And
you
Biden has a
worried?
lot of vulnerability. Trump has a lot of vulnerability. This VP search is vulnerability for Biden. It's going to be crazy.
Would you acknowledge, though, that whenever the president seems to have a few good days, as he did maybe 10 days ago, those good days when it looks like he may be back on track, back on script, and I don't mean, all teleprompter. I mean, he seems to be a little calmer, a little more focused in his communication, that a tweet will change the dynamic instantly, and you'll spiral down for maybe 3 or 4 major news cycles and take everybody off track. I want to get, as someone who's working in the field on this, how badly does that frustrate you?
It does frustrate me. I mean, he sometimes I think things are going well, and he does throw something, pull the pin, and throw the grenade, and you never know what's going to happen. That does frustrate me. But that is him, and that is why he won 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's why Romney didn't win 8 years ago. It's why McCain didn't win 12 years ago. And I worked for all 3 of those guys. The problem is nobody likes boring. Everybody watches Trump because you never know what's going to happen next. And I know that's, people like Dave get a little unhappy because it just doesn't seem presidential in the Eisenhower, Reagan, tradition, or H.W. Bush. But the reality is that this gets the attention in these days. And so when he does that, it is problematic, but it also is a good thing for him in other ways. There was a good story a couple days ago, maybe 4 days ago, that talked about the fact if Trump can win 60% of the days leading between now and Election Day, he'll probably win. Because he doesn't need to win this vote against Biden. He needs to get within about 3 points in the polls, and that's probably enough to win the electoral vote.
Well, Ken,
David, I want to go ahead, David.
The dissatisfaction that I have, and that the Lincoln Republicans and others have, it's not with the president's his ideology. It's that he has not followed the tradition of rational, thoughtful, intelligent governance that has been the hallmark of presidents on both sides of the aisle. We're seeing here someone who doesn't respect the Constitution and the way that it dictates that our government operate. Let me ask you a little question here. You're talking about constitutional government. That's what's upsetting Republicans like me, is the fact that we respect the Constitution and the incumbent in the Oval Office does not. Let me ask you a little trivia question. Who was it who recently called for the immediate resumption of impeachment action against the president? And I'll give you a hint. It wasn't
some guy from the Federalist Society, I know.
The co-founder,
but we've also put in 200 plus judges that he loved.
The co-founder of the Federalist Society, that bastion of liberal thought, right?
Right.
They're calling for the president's impeachment based upon his assertion that he can somehow move or delay the vote.
Oh,
I mean, these are not.
He just says stuff. Yes,
just
go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike
it was
Miller.
To get everybody right.
Yeah, but
the fact out of everybody.
President of the United States, the fact that the president of the United States would not understand that he does not have the unilateral power, that this is not going to happen. I mean, these are not the actions of someone who respects constitutional government.
Does it example? Is this an example, though, David? Contrary to that, does this represent someone who clearly knows in a 24-hour news cycle he can say something and have everybody go off half-cocked in a different direction for 3 or 4 days when there may be some bad news out there, like a drop in the projected annual deficit? He knows how to change the subject, and that's something that Republicans in the past have never been able to do.
From a little experience, guys. He keeps a pocket.
David, and then we're going to go to Scott. Go ahead. Kent, rather.
If the Republican Party wants to become the party of showmanship and tactics and put governance and leadership aside, then I guess that Donald Trump is your guy. This is someone who's not interested in the Republican Party. He's interested in what can advance his own personal agenda and his own personal interests. He's made that abundantly clear. And those of us who believe in Republican values of governance find it abhorrent how the president has conducted himself.
How do you, I'm going to go to you in just a moment, Kent. How do you review and analyze what happened in 2016 when Donald Trump ran against all the rest of that field, all of whom probably agreed with you, and you may have agreed with many of them, They were traditional conservative Republicans, and they could not stop Donald Trump. And the party voters, they overwhelmingly rejected the type of republicanism that you're talking about, David.
I think that analysis is absolutely correct. Donald Trump figured out very brilliantly, in my opinion, how to use the tools of populism to elect himself to the highest office in the land by appealing to people's dissatisfaction with the status quo. He ran as an outsider. The problem he has this time is he has a track record for people to look at and to evaluate, and it hasn't been a good one. We've abandoned.
We'll disagree.
We've abandoned. I mean, for example, following the end of World War II, the United States of America took a leadership role in establishing multilateral, multinational institutions to provide post-World War II and Cold War stability. And Donald Trump has been on a nonstop attack on all those institutions, including the United Nations and NATO.
But David, a lot of people disagree with you on that. Kent, go back to you. It's your turn.
Well, a couple of things. I've actually been in a room while Donald Trump was doing a tweet, and here's what I think he does. He's got a pocket full of ideas he always keeps in his back pocket. And if something major is going on that he doesn't like, that's driving the news in a day, he pulls one of those out, pulls the pin, he throws it, and we see what happens. And they're all talking about him usually, and not talking about a 32% decrease in the GDP that nobody understands.
Well, the story about the story about the president is that he's frequently tweeting when he's on the bathroom. So maybe he's pulling these ideas from someplace else. Back short.
Oh, I'm on your show right now from my bathroom.
Here's how you can make your own face covering in a few easy steps with items you can find around the house, like an old scarf, a bandana or a hand towel, or you can make a face covering out of an old t-shirt. Fold it to the middle from the bottom, fold it to the middle from the top, fold it again to the middle from the bottom, and again from the top, and then 2 rubber bands, one on one side and one on the other side. Then you fold either side to the middle, and you have yourself cloth face covering. It's that easy.
Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're the modern Sonic family. From the town of Beltway, meet George Jetson. His boy Elroy.
With instant acceleration, electric cars are more fun to drive and more affordable than ever. Electric cars are here. Plug in to the present.
Bruce DuMont back in the beautiful city of Evanston, Illinois. 1-800-723-8289 is the phone number. This moment, we are going to take a moment and let each of our guests tell a little bit about themselves and introduce themselves. And we're going to begin with Kent Gray. Kent, go ahead.
Well, thanks, Bruce. Thanks for having me on. I'm calling in from Springfield, Illinois tonight, my hometown. But I know Bruce from many years ago from being in Chicago, going to undergrad at Loyola. I worked on 8 presidential campaigns over my lifetime, all establishment except Donald Trump in 2015 and 16. It's been an interesting 5 years.
Mike Miller.
I'm an economist originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I got my PhD at the University of Pittsburgh in 1980 and have been teaching at DePaul, teaching young minds the economic way of thinking for the past 40 years.
David Cohn.
Thanks, Bruce, and great to be on the show again. I've been the Director of Public Affairs at the Union League Club of Chicago for the last 15 years, as you mentioned. Prior to that, I spent my most of my adult career working in government service. I was the press secretary and campaign manager for Congressman John Porter, who represented Illinois' 10th district for many years. And after he retired, I went to work for Lieutenant Governor Corinne Wood, Lieutenant Governor of Illinois, as her Director of Communications, and started out in Chicago radio as a stringer for WBBM and up north at WKRS and WXLC in Waukegan. So
Very good.
That's
so,
my
so you've got radio in your blood. Radio in
Yeah.
your blood. We have a caller or a texter came in here, and they wanted to know who you voted for in 2012, Dave, since you were talking about that you've been voting for Democrats for a while. They want to know how far that goes back.
I didn't say I was voting for Democrats. I said I did not vote for Donald Trump in 2016.
Okay. Do you want to say who you voted for in 2012?
In 2012, I voted Republican.
Okay. So you voted for Mitt Romney.
I did.
All right. And did you vote for
I did
Obama
too.
the first time around?
I did too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, people just wanted to know. They also want to know, what is it about Joe Biden that you like so much? And then we're going to go to calls.
Dave, you like
Dave?
Joe Biden, really?
My feelings about Donald Trump should not be construed as an endorsement of Joe Biden.
Okay.
Biden has baggage, and he has. I have many ideological differences with Joe Biden and with the Democratic Party and its left wing. You know, as some Lincoln Republicans said, if your house is on fire, you don't particularly care who the fireman is. Just because we don't see Donald Trump as a viable standard bearer for the Republican Party does not mean that we're big fans of Joe Biden. We just see that the future of constitutional government is at stake here, and we need to do something to preserve it.
Okay.
But it's important to have a fireman who can find your house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go
And
to
you're
Russ.
assuming that a Democrat would be more protective of the Constitution than a
Well,
Republican, and I don't believe that for 1 second.
I will say this. I think that I'm alone in this panel in having actually worked in the Congress and on Capitol Hill for most of my adult life. And from what I saw, the dynamics of power do not permit the White House, no matter who the occupant is, to dictate an ideological agenda. The Congress is there. Our system of checks and balances works. And I don't believe the fear-mongering about what might become under a Biden presidency. His policies are not my policies, but his adherence to constitutional norms are something that I could look at and view in a favorable light. I think the problem here is we have a president who has abandoned, Donald Trump, the values and the pillars of the Republican Party and the Republican philosophy as I grew up in the party. It does not represent the values of Republican philosophy that I acquired, as someone young getting involved in politics.
Let's go to calls. Let's go to Rodney, who's listening to us in Oklahoma tonight. Go ahead, Rodney.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Very interesting conversation.
Thank you.
I'm an independent. Thank you. I'm an independent, and I live in the suburbs. And I'm maybe a little left-leaning, but I have voted for a lot of Republicans. I just like most people that decide the election, people in the middle, independents, I like the more moderate tone in especially a president. Now, here's the problem that I see when we elect a party or a president. They always misread the election and think we voted for every damn thing they want. And the reason Donald Trump luckily won the election, because he did not win the popular vote, was, I believe, the trade issue. Now, obviously, the American people and people like me in the middle, we didn't sign up for everything else that went along with that. We didn't sign up for the incompetence of running the government. We didn't sign up for this reality show that we have seen. And no matter what, and we didn't sign up for the destruction of international trade. And no matter what, the people who support Donald Trump at the moment, the decision has been made. Look at the numbers. I've never seen numbers like this, and I'm a political junkie. And the decision's been made. It's all over but the crying.
Let's let Rodney do me a favor. Take a breath now. Let's go to Mike Miller to respond to what you said thus far.
I hear what you're saying, and trade was one of the major reasons I did not vote for Mr. Trump last time. I was not necessarily a fan economic policy. But you did bring up being a moderate. And one thing that made Bill Clinton, for example, a very effective president, even though he is a sexual predator, was he's a moderate. And even in some sense, Barack Obama, compared to what we have, it appears to be the case with Joe Biden, would be considered a moderate. I think Joe Biden has embraced almost everything that the left has thrown at him, and this is going to be a disaster. Donald Trump is not the kind of guy I wish that he were. But in terms of the policies, if you give me two choices, a choice between a radical leftist and somebody like Trump, it's kind of in the middle to the right, I'll take the middle to the right every single time.
Okay. We're going to move on to Roger. Go ahead. You're on the air, Roger. Where are you calling from? Hello, Roger. Are you there?
Yes, I'm.
All right. Let's go to Paul on line 3. Are you there, Paul? What's happening to our calls, folks? Paul, are you there?
I'm here. This is Roger.
Going once, going twice, sold. Okay. On the subject, also a subject that has come up, the president hinted the other day, and because the media ran with it almost for 3 days now, and that is what happens if the election is postponed. The president does not have the ability to do that. Everyone said that, and yet it dominated news for way too long. But the question that was asked a couple of weeks ago by Chris Wallace was, are you going to automatically accept the results of the election? And Donald Trump said no, and he said he didn't do it 4 years ago. And I'm wondering, Mike, why would any candidate automatically say they're going to accept the results of the election if they cannot foresee that there may be some skullduggery out in the body politic on election day, and they may have to have some legal challenges where votes may be in question?
I think that's perfect, and it's within his right to do so. Again, it's not something I would do, but let's keep in mind, of course, that Hillary Clinton said, of course, I will accept the outcome of the election, and they have spent the past 3.5 years being the resistance to try to throw the man out of office. It started from practically his very first day, invoking the crazy Russian scheme, which we all know now was cooked up by the Obama administration and was a complete farce from beginning to end. And so and consider as well, this is a man, you have to give him credit for being still as popular as he is, given that he has had the entire press against him. The amount of negative versus positive reporting on anything that happens, 90% is negative. No other president even comes close. And the fact that he would still have the kind of support in the public, in spite of everybody in the universities, in the media, in the press, in Hollywood, going after him. It's just astounding that he's doing as well as he is.
David,
and it's because he touches people. He really does.
I want to get David's response to that. David, would you acknowledge, and you were not a fan of his, so you didn't vote for him, but would you acknowledge, as being an intelligent young man, that he has not been treated fairly? He's given the news media a lot of fodder, but he really has not been treated fairly by the mainstream media. Would you acknowledge that?
I think as a general principle that's a fair statement, because the president's behavior has invited a lot of the critical coverage that you see. But having said that, if you take a look at, let's take, for example, CNN, which not too long ago was, in terms of its overall presentation, a pretty middle of the road, straightforward news organization. And when you watch coverage these days on CNN, just to your point, the distaste and the dislike of the president literally oozes off of the anchors. Much the same as the Fox anchors ooze.
No, I don't see it. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's the difference between the commentators like Tucker and so forth versus Brett Baer, which is straight news. The CNN people say that they're straight news, and they are not straight news. That's nonsense. I believe there was a study done some years back. They wanted to find out which networks have the straight news people, how they play it down the middle. NPR was one of them. And I was not surprised at that. You know what the second one was? It was Fox. It was because of people like Brett Baer and so forth, and Catherine Herridge. They play it down.
We've
the
got
middle.
to be shortly back shortly on it.
Dallas, St. Louis, Nashville, Tuscaloosa. All major cities to feel the destruction caused by a direct hit from a tornado. Is Chicago next? It's not a question of if, but when, and the clock is ticking. Learn what to do now at ready.illinois.gov to become tornado ready.
Bruce DuMont back on Beyond the Beltway. Thank you very much for joining. And before we go back to calls, I just want to take a moment of personal privilege here to wish the best of luck to our departing producer this evening. Andrew Marshall's been with us for about 15 months, and he is off to Hofstra University. He joined us as a senior in high school, and he has a maturity beyond his age, and he's done a terrific job in producing this show and helping me put it together each and every Sunday night. So we wish him a lot of luck, and I know he'll be a network president someday, and he promised to hire me in my old age, but then I remembered I'm already in my old age. So. Let's go to Paul. Hopefully he's back on the line, and he's calling from Racine, Wisconsin, which is one of the nicest areas of the United States. If you've never been to Racine and Kenosha, Wisconsin, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, Bruce, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes, go ahead.
Okay. I just want to address this to David. David, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said you worked in Congress, right? You've worked for John McCain's campaign?
No. I worked for a member of Congress from Illinois.
Okay. I dare say, David, that that's part of the problem with your line of thinking, and let me explain. You know, one of the things that you like to talk about, and so many of what I would consider, and if I'm labeling you incorrectly, please forgive me, the never Trumpers are, is that they look at this pie-in-the-sky conservatism that at one point we used to have, but we no longer have, right? And I dare say that that's part of the problem. I agree with you that we should be fiscally conservative, but the problem with that, nobody on the Republican side does that anymore, and President Trump is the only one who's had the courage to come out and try to change some of these things, aka the tax cuts. Had it not been for one of your buddies, John McCain, we would have totally repealed Obamacare, but that didn't happen because of people like John McCain, who you say you supported. So don't give me this talk about how, well, you know, we've got to get back to fiscal conservatism and Donald Trump's not the guy to do it. I would argue that what's coming after this pandemic ends, he's probably the only one on both sides of the aisle who will have the courage to make the radical changes necessary to get us back to where we need to be. And then, and only then, can we work on this fiscal conservatism that you so like to espouse, but doesn't happen in the Republican Party.
Well, it doesn't happen in the president's budgets either. The president has proposed spending billions of dollars in spending that frankly, there's no one asking for these funds to be expended. For example, the construction of an unnecessary billions of dollars for a new FBI building, and all kinds of other things. And frankly, the tax cut package, which, as you note, went into effect, that had the effect, and I turn to my fellow panelists, our economists, it had the effect of exploding the federal deficit and adding trillions to the federal debt, the accumulated debt. The return on investment there, that is not fiscally conservative economic policy. So I hear where you're coming from. I think Donald Trump spoke to a lot of people who saw the current political system in America and saw that it was failing them, Republicans and Democrats. And they wanted to give this guy a chance, this outsider. He has squandered that with insufficient leadership for the moment.
The budget deficit did not explode because of the tax cut for corporations. The income from corporation taxes is less than 10% of the total income for the federal government, tax revenues. Let's be true conservatives then. We would embrace the idea of Milton Friedman. There should be no corporate income tax because corporations don't pay taxes, they remit taxes. The taxes should be paid by the people who earn the money from the corporations.
Do we have
I would be completely in favor of that.
Do we have a political perception right now that will become reality to a lot of people, especially those that have been getting $600 a week in unemployment, when the Democrats and Republicans can't agree on the new stimulus package? Are the Democrats going to be able to make the case that they're the ones that are out there fighting for $600, and the Republicans and their leadership are going to be left looking like they don't have a plan? And again, a lot of people are going to look at $600 or $200 or no support, and that's going to be an easy decision for them to make. They're going to go for the Democrats. Is that an issue that concerns you, Kent?
Yeah, I mean, it does concern me because the Democrats will give away anything and any amount of money to blow the budget. I mean, they don't care. $600, $1,000, everybody gets a ventilator in their driveway. I mean, everybody can have anything they want. And so the problem we run into is Republicans can never up that auction on how much money you can give out of the federal dole. To be honest, right now, I think the Republicans are talking about extending the $600 temporarily, or at least putting in maybe a $200 or $400 thing. And the Democrats have basically said, we're not going to do anything. Now, the media is not going to tell the general public that. The Democrats are the ones who are holding this up on people who need it week to week.
This is a perfect example of when I say that the president is not truly a Republican. You look at the Republican leadership in the Congress that's trying to craft and engage in the art of compromise, which is inherent in our system, our constitutional republic. They're being undercut, cut off at the knees by their own president. It was President Trump who has now taken the position that the $600 additional federal money for unemployment should be extended, leaving Mitch McConnell and those in Republican leadership having to fight against their own president because they're trying to maintain some sense of fiscal sobriety. So there's a guy who puts himself and his own reelection prospects in front of the interests of the party and sound governance. That's an example.
I would argue that both the Republicans in Congress and the president are actually paying attention to what people need on the ground out in the country. It's the Democrats who are saying zero until we get exactly what we want in huge spending. But I would point out
there's a lot of people out there, unfortunately, Kent, that all they see is one party waving a $600 check in front of them, and they may not think about the fiscal instability of that idea, because it was a bad idea. It wasn't thought out the first time, and it certainly isn't being thought out this time, except as a very important card to play in the legislative battle that's going on right now. And again, it's bad economics. It may be good politics. Our thanks to Kent Gray and Mike Miller and David Cohen in hour number 1. I'm Bruce DuMont. Back shortly with another full hour.
Welcome to the world, 2116. You can fly across town in minutes, or across the globe in under an hour. Whole communities are living on Mars, and solar satellites provide Earth with unlimited clean power. In less than a century, Boeing took the world from seaplanes to space planes, across the universe and beyond. And if you thought that was amazing, you just wait.
Today, fresh fruits and vegetables will go from a field in California to a grocer in Miami. A bottle of beer from Eagle Pass will journey to a restaurant in Manhattan. A 2x4 in Oregon will find its way to a townhome in Denver. A hybrid will say goodbye to Detroit and hello to a showroom in Austin. While a steel beam will leave a mill in Illinois for a high-rise in Phoenix. And a flat screen in China will head to an electronics store in Memphis. Because today, as every day, wherever you find business, you'll find us.